Roll, please let us know if you're in attendance. Commissioner Carl Baxmeyer.
Here.
Councilman Jesse Bohannon. Commissioner Mike Burrows. District Deputy Commissioner Matt Deitchley.
Here.
Councilman Dwight Fish. Councilman Doug Graham. Commissioner Carrie Groninger.
Here.
Councilwoman Kathy Groninger.
Here.
Mayor Jeff Gross. Mayor Phil Jenkins.
Here.
District Deputy Commissioner Todd Johnson. Councilman Kenneth Lee. Mayor Gina Lichty. Mayor Robert Listenberger. Mayor James Mueller. Mayor Rod Robertson. Councilman Brian Tanner.
Here.
Councilman Tony Violi.
Here.
Commissioner Susie Wyrick. Mayor David Wood.
Yes, sir.
We have a quorum of members present, but we will only be voting in person today.
Okay, thank you, James. First order of business we have is our minutes from our October 9th meeting. Any comments on that? If not, I'll look for a motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we got Debbie. I guess I don't have any chairman report, so next, Debbie on our financial report.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We should all have the September 2024 financial report. So 3 months into our new fiscal year, we are at almost 16% of our budget spent at $2,127,943.63. At the end of September, our cash balance was $1,788,375.47. And our disbursements for the month of September was $449,210.88. Are there any questions about the September financial report? If not, I'd like to ask for board approval of the September 2024 financial report.
So moved. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by aye. Say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Debbie. Secretary, anything on the modifications today? Looks like there's a few modifications in our packet there. Just things that your staff's able to move around, correct?
Correct. Yeah, the modifications are in your packet. They're available online. These are just items that you've empowered staff to make changes to between meetings. It's presented to you for informational purposes only. There is no action required.
Old business?
No old business today.
Well, new business, James.
Yeah, for new business, we'll have a few transportation resolutions, and Caitlin is going to kick us off.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We have two NDOT initiated resolutions today. The first is for an intersection improvement project at State Route 19 intersection at County Road 828. The action that we're taking to the TIP is adding preliminary engineering into the TIP. This project's already started, but it was determined that they need additional funds. And then for item B, we have the same action, adding in preliminary engineering into the TIP for the State Route 23 intersection at Adams Road. If there are no questions, I'd ask for your approval of Transportation Resolution 29-24.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All
I'll
those,
second.
a lot of seconds. Second help. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Jeremiah.
Morning, everyone. I'm here to present Transit Resolution 30-24. And this whole resolution is basically for the interurban trolley capital needs for the next year, just using our regular FTA allocation for the Elkhart Goshen urbanized area. So the first project is to add a project to the TIP to buy 4 replacement vans. These will be 4 minivans for the ADA access service. The next is to purchase mobile surveillance and security equipment so that we can continue maintaining and add the proper video surveillance to the new interurban trolley buses that we've 2 of which were just delivered, 1 of which should be here in the next month. The third is to acquire ADP software for transit operating, ADP hardware for transit operating. This helps us fund the UTA passenger counters, which help us provide ridership, and the Passio Go system that tells passengers where our buses are for GPS tracking. And then finally, we are adding some funding to or replace the current fare box system because our fare boxes are 12 years old and are reaching the end of their useful. Are there any questions about Transit Resolution 30-24?
On your mobile security, is this like for all your buses or is this just the new ones that are coming in? Or-
Yeah, so we have video cameras on all of our buses currently. It's just to add the hardware for the new vehicles that are coming in. So last year we had 4 new vehicles and those are all equipped. This year we have 3 new vehicles and so we need to equip those out.
And this also will help us fund a long-term goal to, instead of, right now we can only download video from our buses kind of on a, I'd say 2010 solution, which is they have to be physically at our bus yard and connect to a local like router
Right.
for wireless download. And part of this should help us, will also help us advance the system to a more modern solution where we'll actually hopefully have SIM cards on the buses and be able to basically get video at any time. So
What do you use the video for?
All sorts of things. Complaints come in, and there's he said, she said, we can adjudicate that through some video and understand, provide information to our contracted vendor about opportunities to work on customer service with our drivers, or there's a slips, trips and falls claim. We can pull up that video, or, God forbid, there's a crash. We can look at that kind of information as well and see what happened. We have a camera on the street side of the vehicle, a camera on the curb side of the vehicle, camera that faces out, camera that faces in, a camera at the back of the vehicle, and then 3 or 4 other cameras inside the vehicle. These are 35-foot vehicles. They are rather large, so one camera just doesn't quite do it. But some pick up audio and those kind of things. And so it can be helpful in a lot of different situations. If it's just a simple kind of customer service complaint that we can look into, or if we're curious about, some behaviors, making sure, certain policies are being followed, we can check all those kind of things, as well as then just kind of be able to look into incidents that come up.
How long do you retain the video?
Depends.
The video, basically the way the system works is, I think the hard drive is designed that it'll erase the oldest video. We've had success getting video that's probably about, a month old.
Yeah.
If we tell the system we want to retain the symbol.
If we trigger it and download it, then we can retain it indefinitely. And we do that a lot of times if there are incidents that occur, to be able to provide to either our legal counsel or most of the time trying to be able to provide that to our contracted vendor, because we ask that they indemnify us of incidents. And so if it's triggered to download, we can retain it for a much longer period of time. But yeah, I think if it's just old footage and it's sitting on a hard drive, it's maybe a month or 2, and then it'll start to erase.
Yeah, it's basically based on like the, oldest footage gets erased first. So that's why I can't give a definite, like, it's there for a week answer.
Perfect. Motion to approve.
And I will, okay.
Second.
Just one more question.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Did you say that this was kind of a stopgap, that ultimately you want to go to a better?
No, this system is designed, the new system that we're getting on our buses is designed to be wirelessly compatible. So the hardware is there. We just haven't activated the software side because we're still.
As we transition the fleet over, we're making sure that the new equipment is ready for that upgrade. And then this will provide some funding to make sure that that's all in place. But that'll be 7 out of our 13 to 15 buses. So we're not going to necessarily immediately go from the current solution, which is it downloads when it's at the yard, to we can remote in and see it live. But all that equipment will be ready for that once we make that full
I
transition.
misunderstood. I wanted to make sure we weren't.
You're good.
taking a
Great question.
stopgap that we could have.
Yep.
So we got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. And now.
It looks like Caitlin's back on some grant funding.
Yes, I have
Staff updates.
a few grant updates. Just wanted to make you aware, there's a few US DOT discretionary grants that have recently announced their notice of funding. The first one is the Promoting Resilient Operations for Transformative, Efficient, and Cost-Saving Transportation, or shorterly known as PROTECT grant. This is for resilience projects or projects that could address things like flooding and those type of things. And those applications will be due February 24th, 2025. The other one grant opportunity I wanted to make you aware of is the next round of RAISE grant funding. As you all are aware, we already have two kind of RAISE planning grants in the region, one of those for the Mishawaka Elkhart Trail Planning Study, as well as one in the city of South Bend for their River Market District Cooper Bridge area, but those are underway. The RAISE grant is probably one of the larger pots of funding for locally significant or regionally significant projects, and so those applications will be due at the end of January. So as always, if you guys are considering different types of projects in your communities, feel free to reach out to us and we'll be happy to assist with data or any other things related to that grant application preparation process. And then on the state side, last week, the state announced the Community Crossings Matching Grant Awards from the July call. In our region, we had, I believe it was $10.7 million awarded across 18 communities. So I think that brought our total closer to 25 million for the year, which is higher than it has been in previous years, thanks to the $1.5 million cap. NDOT will be holding the next round of CCNG in January. So those applications are due in at the end of January. And from what I've heard, they're continuing the $1.5 million cap, at least for this first round. So good thing to capitalize on.
Yeah, I think normally in most years we would be at about $15 million. So that's about an extra $10 million in paving for our region that we're seeing now with that increase to 1.5. Those are approximate numbers. Don't necessarily hold me to those.
All right, and then another grant opportunity is the NDOT call for projects. This is opening, maybe it's open. No, yes, it's opened. And it will be closing December 6th. And so this is for any type of surface transportation project that is outside of MACOG's urbanized area. So we're looking forward to seeing what applications come from that. And as always, we're happy to help. And then I will pass it to Nick. He has a little update on MACOG's call for projects.
Thank you, Kayla. Yeah, so that was NDOT's call for projects, and now we have our own call for projects. This is wrapping up actually Friday, so acts fast. So this is for communities in our urbanized area. This is north of the US 20 and Goshen. The application items are on the website. I can run through it with you, but also feel free to chat with us afterwards for any clarifications or specifications. Currently, we have received 2 applications submitted, and there are 3 more in the works. Looking forward to what we got going.
And these will be for projects in that most likely fiscal 29, 30, 31 kind of time frame. We'd love to always program projects sooner, but we only have $16 million or so available, and that goes pretty quick. So again, as Nick mentioned, this is largely for those urban kind of areas. If you think about that in your mind, it's really everything inside the US 20 bypass, and then that connection down to Goshen and all of Goshen. So that's kind of the rough area. If you have questions over anything in particular, always feel free to reach out to us. But those are kind of the urban call, and everything outside of that would be then part of that NDOT rural call.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Yeah.
I have an update on our charging and fueling infrastructure grant implementation. This is the roughly $4 million grant that MACOG received to install electric vehicle charging in the region. There are 2 things happening right now. The first is the selection of level 2 destination chargers. These are slower, intended to attract people to downtowns and other locations that spend several hours. We received a number of applications from nonprofits and other private entities, and we're currently scoring and selecting those through a competitive round. But we are still able to offer that funding to local governments that don't have to compete against those private applications if there's any interest. But we already have a number of, just thinking off the top of my head, like North Liberty, Walkerton, Argus, Bourbon, Syracuse, Winona Lake, Bristol. There's a lot of small towns already participating. We have some libraries, county parks, but if this is news to you, or there's any information that you'd like to discuss with me, I'm happy to. But we'll be making that selection within the next 2 weeks and submitting those final locations to Federal Highway for approval. So we want to act within the next 4 weeks.
How many locations is that?
So
Applications I've seen.
good question. So we have funding for 32. It is our intent to select roughly 20 of those for installation in 2025. And then the remainder, the balance 12, we'll see if things are over budget or how much funding's left. But the intent would be install those in 2027 because there are a number of towns that said, I'm not ready, either budgeting or I'm building a new parking lot. The parking lot's not going to be built until 2026. So we wanted to allow some time. So we'll offer the additional 12. But right now we're looking at a total of 20. We'll probably select less than half of those 12 applications that have come in, and the rest will go to local governments.
So when
Because there are already a large list of local governments that have basically, they were not asked to submit a competitive call.
The question is a location one charging location or how?
So one location with 4 ports.
Okay.
So 4 cars charge at once. That's
even on the level 2.
on the level 2. That's required. That's a minimum number.
Okay.
There can be more, but there must be at least 4. That's a bit of a challenge for the smaller communities. Small
And it
parking
requires
lots.
5 spaces because of ADA.
In 5 spaces because of ADA. Yeah, you were paying attention last time.
You got bonus points.
Yeah, it's a challenge. but-
Yeah, so we've done these with the Volkswagen project, which was private money. And so a lot of those were 2 charging stations at 2 different parking spots. But since this was federal funding with the federal discretionary grant, they adopted a standard that for the level 3s, I completely can understand, but for the level 2s felt a little overkill. But we're dealing with those standards that are provided to us.
I know that was an issue. I know, for example, Middlebury, New Carlisle, those were at least 2 communities that had initial interest, but then just with the parking constraints, they're at least going to wait and decide again in 2026, 2027, but just it's a struggle. So the second component of this is the fast charging that's intended to serve like highways where people stop for just 15, 20, 30 minutes, depending on what their car is capable of accepting as far as charging speed. So we received 5 proposals, and that's a combination of locations between South Bend International Airport and then US 30 near Warsaw and near Plymouth. And for those 2 locations, we actually had the respondents say, pick the location, find the site host, execute that site host agreement, and bring us the location. So we didn't pre-select, it needs to be at, I don't know, Lowe's or something. But we did identify the South Bend International Airport as a location. And so the 5 entities responding provided applications for a combination. 1 applied for all 3, 1 for 2 locations. So we have a variety of proposals that we're scoring now, and we'll have at least interviews next week and have a decision soon. So,
And that there was 4 complete proposals that many provided options for multiple locations, right? Like as in they submitted a location for Plymouth, they submitted a location for Warsaw, and then the South Bend Airport. The South Bend Airport probably received all of the proposals because it was an already identified location and there was a lot more information. There was a lot more groundwork that was required for the other 2 locations because we didn't have a preferred identified location. But really good proposals. So it'll be an interesting process to see how that unfolds, but that's, you know, a lot of private sector investment that we would be a small participant in.
yeah, and also the nice thing about the level 3 projects, we don't pay a dime for that. The 20% comes from the private entity that we'll contract with. So 0% of the money comes from MACOG.
So at the end of it, who owns the charging station?
The charging station will be owned by the entity that we're contracting with to build, operate, maintain it.
Okay.
They're
And they
putting
get
in-
the revenues from it as well.
Yeah, and they're required, the revenue, the user fees and things they have to meet is standard of being reasonable. The rate of return has to be reasonable. There's some federal requirements around that, so there's not just price gouging by utilizing grant money. There's some guardrails around that.
And you may have said it, how many of those are we looking to find space for?
It's 3 locations.
That's it, but that's it, there's no more.
No, that's it.
Not right
Once and
now.
done, one near Plymouth,
Yep.
one near Warsaw, and one south there.
The level 3s are significantly more expensive. And so, you know,
$1
it's,
million each.
yeah, and, you know, being very choosy with those locations.
And that's $1 million though for 4 chargers, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
It's just, most of that's on the utility supply side, and just hardware is more expensive.
You mean 4 chargers at each location?
Correct.
Okay,
That's what I meant.
Yep.
that's what I figured. It's just like 4, we're talking 3.
And some of the
4 ports at
proposals-
3 locations.
Some of the
Of course,
proposals are
let's call
gonna
them
put
ports,
8.
there you go.
So they can choose to put 8 or more, build it out, prepare for 12.
So the contractors or the entities that solicited the quote, are they all national firms, or are they, this is what they do? Or are they,
I think for the most part,
It's a combination, I
some
know
might be more like regional, as in like a Midwest version.
Ohio,
right?
Indiana. You know.
But I don't think that there were any that were just random firm that decided, we're gonna do electric charging today. Like, most of them have demonstrated experience in other locations.
And the ability to respond and maintain 97% uptime is probably one of the most important things we'll be looking at. Doesn't do any good if it doesn't work when someone shows up.
Right.
All right. Next update, somewhat related, we are once again returning to fire rack. This will be December 3rd with a snow date of December 10th. It's hard to believe it might be snowing in a couple weeks, but 10-day forecast says that they will start being winter soon. So a couple new things. If you were there, I think some of you were there last January. This time we will have representatives actually from GM coming from Detroit there, and they'll be bringing a police version of the Chevy Blazer, actually with the right suspension and everything. And if you're not aware, the town of Walkerton just had their police Blazer delivered, and they're putting that into service once it gets upfitted. So folks from Walkerton might be there, and then this vehicle will be there to test drive that actual police version. And as well as the Chevy Silverado work truck, which the city of Napanese had one in operation for a couple of months. I don't know if you want to say anything about that, but you'll have a chance to test drive it at this event as well. Not your truck.
Not yours. Yeah.
So if you'd like to register, just come talk to me or Kelsey after the event, and we'll get that information out to your staff. I think people had a really fun time last time, especially the police chiefs, police officers.
Please make sure to help promote that. There is an opportunity to sign up to actually reserve that track space and whatnot. Please promote that either to your public works folks or to sheriff or police.
Where's the
Just
sign
be able
up?
to help that out.
Is it on our website?
I'll get you
It's,
signed up.
yeah, it's,
I can send an email with that information. It's in our Gazette,
QR code.
the e-Gazette.
it's also in
Have you
our,
met my people in Elkhart County?
it's
For
also
me
in
to
our Gazette.
pass the QR code to somebody else, I just did it. I
will
couldn't
send
even
you
do
an
it.
email.
We can send you an email with the link.
Right, exactly.
But like James was saying, the target for this event, it's local governments only. The target is police and law enforcement, because that's where there's the greatest opportunity for fuel savings, and the performance really is a good fit for that. But any local government department or position, even administrative, will have some lower end electric vehicle options as well, more in the like $30,000 price range.
Bill, can I ask a question about your electric truck?
Yeah.
Do you have a slow charging station there?
We have an agreement right now. We don't have our charging station built out yet for that vehicle. But through the dealership that we bought it from, which is in Napanee, they've got level 3 and level 2 chargers. So we've got an agreement with them that we're charging it.
One at your.
Yes.
Probably a slow charger do overnight.
So level 2.
There's just an issue with the state getting some budget approvals.
Yeah. And
I'm
there's,
just curious the infrastructure they have.
But I
Yeah.
believe once a week is what they're charged.
yeah, it's
Gentlemen, I
not,
talked to
yeah.
them
I mean, it's mainly in town, so it's not.
It's not bad.
So
Yeah.
the link you just sent me, it says the new date is January 11th, not December 3rd.
I just took a picture of the QR code.
This is January 11th. It may be Okay, we'll get that fixed. That was last year.
That was last year.
Or this year, but it feels like last year.
It
We'll
was,
get that fixed for you, so
Yeah.
apologies for that. And then the last update here, real quick, the Brownfields Assessment Grant, that's a $1.5 million EPA grant with 0% match from MACOG. We just awarded the team Roberts Environmental, DLZ, Revitalized Communities. At least two of those firms have a very local presence in the region. So we've kicked off that. And we will be looking for new sites in the next, probably around January, February, but right now we're really focused on our priority sites. So like Tinky Oil in Warsaw and the McCord's Manufacturing and the McCord site in Plymouth and some sites on the west side of South Bend are kind of our first priority. And then we'll open up to new sites first quarter next year.
that's about $1.5 million that we have for those phase 1 and phase 2s. So really being able to understand with those properties, if they're contaminated, and then where and how much, and how do we mitigate and get that back into a taxable reuse, or a positive reuse. And so, excited to be able to work with Roberts Environmental on Goshen. They've been a part of the team previously. It's a new team structure though. So this will be the first time that we have DLZ on board with this, with their kind of environmental side of house. So it'll be good overall, hopefully, success. In the past, we have gone and been able to use this funding much quicker than the time allotted. So because we have a number of sites and been able to move forward with a number of things with them. And so if you do have sites of interest, get them to us early. Don't wait, assuming that we will have funding 3 years from now. Because if past performance is any indicator, we have typically gone through that funding at a pretty rapid pace. We had 600,000 and that was supposed to last 3 years and it lasted about 1.5 years, maybe 2. We had 500,000. That was supposed to last 3 years. That lasted about 1.5 years.
It's because we had a lot of good projects. We had a lot of housing projects that had an environmental issue. That was kind of the sticking point. We were able to solve that and get those, you know, we have the Arnold 25 project in Warsaw that's now being occupied. So a lot of those projects pop up and they need help with old legacy environmental issues.
So please make sure to feed us those properties so that we can help you out. But we definitely have a number of sites identified early on, but there's always going to be a little bit of space for new things as well. So please help us identify those locations.
And we can send out an email to policy board also on the tire rack event, just especially for you all, so you can forward that on.
Right, I have a quick little update on the fiscal year 24 annual listing of obligated projects. This is a document that we produce every year, and it highlights obligations that have happened in the previous year, which is the federal government's legal commitment to providing those federal funds for transportation projects. So this is where it's posted online on MACOG's Transportation Improvement Program page. And I have a few highlights from that report. So these are obligations that happened from July of 23 to June of 24. In total, we had about $102 million in federal funding obligate across all of our local, state, and transit projects. And this includes projects in various phases and includes such as PE, right-of-way, and construction. You'll notice from our local side, we had 35.7 million obligated, and you'll notice that Elkhart County represents a pretty large portion of that obligation, and a lot of that is due to the local tracks projects that are currently in process. So Elkhart County, their Sunnyside Overpass project went to construction, which is a significant investment, and as well as Hively Overpass is currently in the right-of-way phase. And so we saw some obligations related to that on those two projects. And then this is kind of a snapshot of the different types of projects as well as the funding types that were obligated. The Surface Transportation Block Grant Program is our largest program in the region, which represents over half of the federal funding that was obligated. As in many previous years, we'll notice that we have a significant number of bridge projects that are currently in process. So that bridge amount was the 36.3 million for 13 projects. In addition, we have significant number of bike and pedestrian projects that are currently in development with obligations 11.2 million. And then I just wanted to highlight two projects that are in our urbanized area. They're both bridge related, but have a transportation alternatives perspective. One of those is the pedestrian bridge in Elkhart County, County Road 17 over US 33, which was recently the prefab was installed, and it's nearing completion this year. And then I also wanted to highlight the Mishawaka Riverwalk, the Cedar Street Bridge is currently in process, really providing a facility for that connection and the extension of the Mishawaka Riverwalk. So excited to see those projects come to completion. All right. Up next, I have the update related to the Propel US 30 study. Hot off the presses, they just released their level 3 analysis yesterday for level 3 alternatives. I know there's been a series of kind of stakeholder meetings yesterday that were held both for the east and west side. But this document, this level 3 portion, will be available for public comment through December 13th. And really it was taking the concepts that were identified in level 2, those primary kind of intersections, bundling them into planning sections that include secondary intersections to really create several different improvement packages for those planning sections. Yeah, it's a pretty lengthy document, but I think very important to get into the details of that. They will be holding 2 public information meetings in our region, and there's several others outside, but the first one in our region will be in Plymouth, and that will be on Thursday, November 14th this week. And then there will be one in Warsaw held next week on Wednesday, November 20th. And so, yeah, I didn't know if you wanted to add. I know we.
Yeah, I'll guard my tongue here a little. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not surprised by where we're at in the process as the end of one governor's term comes to a conclusion. We have a new governor taking office. This study is set to come out now with final kind of overall plan approval January-ish. We'll see where that goes. Ultimately, the study will not be prioritizing any segment and will not be prioritizing any individual intersection. There will be no prioritization. Instead, there will be planning segments is how they grouped everything. And that there are a series of alternatives, as they call them, build packages, where they might recommend or carry forward, which is if you are looking at something in the future, these might be decent options. That's fine. It's essentially a menu-based option. My skepticism or maybe somewhat disappointment around that is they've reiterated at multiple steps throughout this that there is not necessarily a next step. The next step is that the districts would submit, if they so choose, for these planning segments or projects to move forward during the annual calls that they typically have. NDOT is currently doing the 2030 call, right? So that's a 5-year development-ish cycle. So the earliest you might see anything that comes out of this study would be 2031 at its most aggressive. Obviously, there's asterisks there. It depends on what type of treatment we're talking about and those kind of things. The thing that I guess I'm most cautious about is that, you know, there's been a lot of public feedback around arc cuts, J-turns, reduced conflict intersections, whatever you want to call them. They're a treatment type that generally the public has shown some skepticism around. They continue to be options in pretty much all of the planning segments. And my concern is that as the districts look at all of their needs, that this study almost lends itself towards the district submitting build packages in their annual calls that are primarily inclusive of J-turns. That's my worldview. That's my point of view. I could be completely wrong in that. I just know that there are a lot of needs. There are little funds available in every mobility and safety call for the district, and that if this isn't going to be a central office push initiative, that it lends itself towards smaller improvements. That's my worldview. So the alternatives came out yesterday. There are some good things in there, but it's intermixed with a very murky, questionable implementation timeline, which to me lends itself to lighter, quicker, cheaper. And so we'll see where that develops. But there's a public meeting tomorrow in Plymouth, next Wednesday in Warsaw. We encourage everybody to go to that if you can't attend that. There are options to participate with that Pell online to be able to provide that feedback. And we will be asking the Pell planning teams, like they have done in the past, that the various level 1 and level 2s to come to the December meeting. That will be like right at the end of the public engagement period for level 3. So don't wait, but we're going to ask them to come and present at the December meeting, just to give you, by then you might have heard it 2 or 3 times, but we feel like it's important for the board to be able to hear kind of where that study's at from that perspective. Yeah, I don't know, Carrie, as a commissioner from Kosciuszko, if I've encapsulated those feelings appropriately.
Yeah, I mean, you were probably a little more politically correct than I probably would have been in my words on what we came up with, because pretty disappointing from what the public input has been pretty firm against all the J-turns and R-cuts and all that, and feel like we're getting slow walked across the finish line and some new administration. And
Well, and the end dates are, or the next dates are even after any 8-year period. I mean,
Yep. And part of that is like just the process for project
love
development.
listening to the
right?
people, don't you?
But there is a part of this that, the study has been ongoing for 2+ years at this point. And by the time we're looking at implementation, we're talking about a period of 12, 15+ years since we kind of hit go on some of this study. So it just feels very, very slow.
yeah, the only thing I will say is, there's a thing going on right now over at SDI that NDOT and the governor is there making some announcements that I think there's significant economic development that happens along the US 30 corridor. That's something historically that the IEDC usually then gets involved and helps get some money to NDOT to maybe fund some of these things. But I don't think that, I think there's opportunity there, but it's just unfortunate that, we're not getting a more prioritized list to really help push some projects forward. Because I know in Kosciuszko County, we pretty much have somebody die or have a life-changing accident every 2 months in Kosciuszko County on US 30. So, that's to me unacceptable from a safety perspective on loss of life and life-changing accidents just in our county. We're only 26 miles of the 136 miles that are studied. So,
yeah, if I could jump in just for a minute too, I'm certainly not debating what anybody's sharing here. Also, it bears mention the timelines that we're seeing here are not really different from what we've been hearing all along. So that none of that's a surprise. Again, not defending or debating, just sharing something. The last thing I'll say too on the J-turns or whatever you want to call them too. I think, James, you mentioned very clearly, and you're absolutely right, the amount of funding and the timelines and the opportunities to solve some of these problems means we have some challenges. So what that means for us, in my personal opinion, as in that deputy commissioner, is we have to be able to look at all the options. When it comes to a J-turn, the public can dislike them all they want, but they work. They do. Now, I'm not saying that's what I want here. I'm not saying that's what NDOT wants here. What I am saying is I want to look at every option we possibly can to spend our dollars as quickly and easily as possible to save lives. So in my mind, this is just Matt Dykstra speaking, not for NDOT. That means I will look at J-turns too, because we can save a lot more lives with J-turns, whether people like them or not. And I've gone on record many times as saying, I'm not Mr. J-turn spokesperson, but if I need to be the one that stands there and takes the arrows, so we can save some lives, I'm gonna do it. So I just want to put that on the table too, just saying, that doesn't mean we're throwing J-turns everywhere. All that means is we need to be able to look at every option to solve problems, because we have this much money and this much need, then we gotta figure out how to stretch those dollars. So for what it's worth.
And I, from my perspective, J-turns, R-cuts, RCIs, whatever we want to name them this week or next. I think in the right context, they do work. The context is really important, right? Like, you can use a sledgehammer to kill a fly, right? Like, you can, it's a tool. It doesn't necessarily mean that it won't do any other damage, right? Like, there are specific tools in specific locations, right? Like, so, I think context of where those go is really, really important. And I think that this is my perspective of the public opinion, has been that it feels like it's either take it or leave it, right? Where it's, these will go where we want them to go, whether you like them or not. And I think that is a really hard context for people to come to any warm and fuzzy around.
I don't disagree. And what I will say to that is, we have put in a number of J-turns over the state. All those, I will fight to my dying day that they weren't the right spot. To the ones we've implemented to this day. We've never put one in where I truly believe we were trying to shoehorn something because we were forcing it down public service. I'll also tell you, I've been in a lot of public hearings, and never once I've heard, if I had a nickel for every time I heard, they work, just not everywhere. If I ever heard someone say, but here they do work, they've never said that. Sure. But they've always worked when we've done it. So again, this is not a debate against anyone at this table or even anybody in the public. All I'm saying is that we need to be able to look at all options potentially, and we're not going to put it where they're not appropriate, and that I can stand by.
Yeah.
I can add, I have seen J-turns that work in Florida. That's where I've experienced them most. I do think we have continued to evaluate the use of J-turns in all areas, and it feels a lot like kicking the can on a regular basis. And it's a hard pill to swallow from an overall perspective and context standpoint. I would say, to add to the discussion, as we are trying like crazy to develop up in this northern area, not recognizing the need for limited access or bypass type of construction, every time we get put back into this, let's take another 2 years and consider every option again. It just seems like we're kicking the can and saying, the North, you don't matter. You can't develop. You can only do what we say because we say it. And in trying to find, we've all had public comments. We all know how they go. We all know the intention behind them. But trying to recognize that there are two parts to this discussion that include northern side, you matter, is a big piece. And I'm not sure how to eloquently say that. So it's actually considered in some of the budget side. I mean, I understand your hands are tied where they are. But if you can relate any of that, I would greatly appreciate, say, keeping us in context for true bypass type of development. I don't think we need a 465. And my little plug is we should toll 465 as well for funding needs. But to keep that whole concept of northern side, you matter as well. Yes, J-turns can work, and they can work in larger areas where there's a heavy construction, or not heavy construction, heavy traffic, because that's where I've seen them in Florida. But again, it's hard to say that our overall development goals do not matter with safety in mind as well, because they have to stay hand in hand indefinitely. They can't just say, well, today this is what it is, and we're going to keep kicking this can every 4 years.
I understand that, and I will tell you, I lived in the North my whole life, never not lived in the North. I'm born and raised South Bend, and I live here now. And so I will continuously fight for what's right for our area. And that is absolutely not to say that central office and I are not aligned either. So just know the North does get its due. In this situation, I know why you feel that way, and I'm not debating that whatsoever. But we will continue to have those conversations. For me, those conversations are focused around safety, and whatever that looks like. But that doesn't mean that we don't have a path forward moving forward. I think it's, as James did say, yes, the 2031 would be a project probably the soonest, but there are plenty of projects that we prioritize in a short time frame. And so anyway, I'm happy to have further discussion. I don't want to delay anyone else any longer, but I'm happy to have further discussion either after this meeting or some other time. I'm happy to chat about it.
Okay. And I think that's the important part that we want to bring up is that this Pell study is not going to provide any sort of conclusive end to this conversation, right? There is going to be a continuous conversation to be able to prioritize and move projects forward, right? Like, so that's why we want to have the Pell Study Committee or the Pell Study teams come in December, just to make sure that it's still top of mind, but throughout really this next administration, that conversation needs to continue. So.
And just confirmation, both the West and East study teams will be able to come to go. So they will be here on December 11th. Onto our another plan, our Move Safe Regional Transportation Safety Action Plan. We are kind of in the final stretches of the development of this plan. Last month, we held a series of safety charrettes with each of the counties as well as the cities within our region to really delve into priority infrastructure projects that could be pursued for SS4A funding in the future or through other avenues such as our call for projects and DOT's call for projects, etc. So those were really good conversations, and I think we kind of gathered a lot of good information from that. We will be holding our last task force meeting December 11th. So that will be actually after policy board. It'll be from 1 to 3 at the Chicory Event Center. So not too far away from here. So if you have the time and would like to come, that will be our last one. We're going to be delving into more of the countermeasures conversation. So discussing, in addition to the infrastructure projects, what kind of programs, policies, et cetera, could be we could implement as a region to enhance safety in our region.
Great. I got the next update is the regional housing study. So we talked a little bit about this a couple times in the past, but that's coming near its completion. Right now on our website, we have a interactive dashboard with a lot of our background research and some of the data analysis that our consultant conducted, looking at a regional level for what our housing conditions are today, what kind of demand we're looking at. We also have a breakdown for each of the 3 counties, which is St. Joe, Elkhart, and Marshall County, looking at those also in particular. So you can kind of get in there and dive into the data if you are someone who likes to see that information. We're also having a public survey to get some more sentiment from the public about where they see housing as an issue, and kind of get their input on the overall process as well. This is out now for public consumption and review through the end of this month, and our goal is to wrap up this study then in December, and then re-present it then here as a kind of complete document and conclusion for you as the policy board here in December, January timeframe as well. And so you'll get a lot more detail on that, but in the meantime, you can definitely see more on our website there. Also, please help us spread the word to your the residents in your communities and to other stakeholders that this information is out there. It's really impactful, really useful information, I think. And so we'd love to make sure everyone gets a chance to see it and interact with that as well. And if you have any people who are interested in some updates, we definitely can come and talk more one-on-one or give some small presentations if that's helpful to make sure this information gets out kind of going forward. Even after we finish this in the end of the year, kind of going forward, we want to make sure that this stays top of mind for everyone, and we can help work together to kind of tackle this regional issue.
Yeah, and so this has been a great partnership with the community foundations in Elkhart County, Marshall County, and St. Joe County, as well as in the South Bend Elkhart Regional Partnership, giving us a lot of great data related to this topic about being able to provide attainable housing, right? So one of the stats that we shared this week is if a household consisting of a teacher and a firefighter, they would make in our region a median salary of $103,000 combined. So that's like a $51,000 salary and a $52,000 salary combined.
Which fire department pays that?
fire department is that?
It's just on average, looking at the entire region on average, right? But if you're, if that's your overall,
Out of curiosity, we don't have fire, I don't pay fire, so.
You want to?
Starting
No.
wages would be like at 68.
Yeah.
That's the bottom.
And aren't teachers at 55 now?
depends on the district.
No.
PHM is around 50, 51, I want to say. So, but
Anyway, sorry,
your,
James.
your max affordable home for, regardless of profession, if you're making it combined about 100,000, or if you're an individual making 103,000, that means your max affordable, attainable home price, what you can really afford is around 249,000, which is $32,000 short of the median home price right now, right? If you are just a single individual making around 58,000 or so, that means that your rent that you can typically afford, what's obtainable to you is about $1,200, which is enough to maybe get a 1-bedroom, but you're not able to get a 2-bedroom. Okay. So really just being able to look at what is obtainable and where those gaps are, and then strategies as a whole to look at how our region can start to provide more attainable housing for individuals. So lots of good data and information there to be able to look at and hopefully be able to make good decisions around.
Great, and you can find that on our website at housingstudy.macog.com. So,
So I just had a quick update on the MACOG Regional Van Pool, which is, we recently signed a contract and have fully started implementing our Commute by Enterprise, sponsored by MACOG as a regional van pool. You'll soon see vehicles out on the road that look like this. And these are just some facts. We've already have 82 participants in the van pool program with 8 vans. These are all at employers in Goshen, Bristol, and Middlebury. We were luckily able to kind of work with Enterprise. Already had some existing relationships, so that's why we're able to launch this so quickly with these initial users of the service. And these are coming from St. Joe, Elkhart, Noble, LaGrange, and LaPorte. And as this van pool program's been set up, it means as long as the van pool either starts, so it could be people who live in St. Joe or Elkhart County and are leaving that area, or is an employer within St. Joe and Elkhart County, as long as one of those two ends touches our 2 urbanized counties, they're eligible for our van pool and the MACOG subsidy for.
So yeah, just what we would ask is you have a little sheet in front of you that provides a little bit of information on our van pool program. Take a look at it as you talk to your staff, as you talk with employers, make them aware of this new program. It's a really affordable way to address a very large workforce challenge that a lot of our employers face, which is reliable transportation. This is a national partner who deals in van pools across the country with Commute with Enterprise. And so, we're excited that we already have basically about 8 vans in operation with about 82 participants already. And that's at the launch of this event, right? So this is just a few months in. But we would ask that as you meet with employers, as you meet with constituents, as you talk with your staffs, that you help promote this to make them aware, since this is a brand new program. We've done a lot of warm introductions to EDCs and chambers and all of those kind of things with our Commute with Enterprise friends. But this is a very affordable way to get workforce to typically industrial sites. But that's not doesn't have to be the employer. It can be, we're having some conversations with the University of Notre Dame. It could be hospitals as well. Really, we're agnostic on what the commute trip looks like. But it's just another great tool in the toolbox to be able to get people to and from work efficiently, effectively, and a little bit more flexibly than what our fixed route transit can do, especially for some of these employers that are, say, in Bristol or out at the IEC or those kind of locations that traditional public transit isn't going to make that long distance effectively. So,
How much does it cost for either the company to participate or for the individuals?
So really, it kind of, the way this works is that MACOG will provide basically a $750 subsidy, and then a mixture of the employer and the employee, and it's really up to the employer how that breakdown goes will make up the rest for the cost of the van. So the idea would be if the full cost of the van would be, let's say, I'm just throwing out this number, let's say it was $1,000 a month, that extra 250 would then, the employer could decide, do they want to fully subsidize it? Would they want to subsidize part of it and have the employees pay the rest? Would they want only the employees to pay that rest? And remember, that additional cost would be divided by up to 15 people if that was a full 15-passenger van.
we can get you more information though on the specific pricing, and our subsidization is about $700 on each vehicle
Per month?
Yeah.
And it's the urbanized areas only, or connecting to the urbanized?
It has to connect to St. Joe
Okay.
or Elkhart. It doesn't have to be urban, right? So it could be folks coming from Napanee to Warsaw, right? It could be folks going from Silver Lake up to Middlebury, right? Like, it doesn't have to be in urban. It's just, it has to start or end in one of those counties of St. Joe or Elkhart.
So,
Right.
for example, it could be people coming from South Bend to an employer in Plymouth as well to go the other.
Yep.
Okay. Interesting.
Just curious, though, I know a lot of Amish use this type of transportation. Would they be eligible for this as well?
Yeah. I'm not sure of our participant makeup of the 82 because we don't want to get into too much personal identifiable information. But coming from Elkhart, Noble, LaGrange, LaPorte, heading to employers in Goshen, Bristol, and Middlebury, there might already be some of those individuals that are in Amish or Mennonite communities that are already in the program. But yeah, it'd absolutely be a potential workforce solution for.
Well, I just know
Yep.
a lot of factories have that. They have one
Yep.
guy that's, what do they call an Englishman or whatever that can drive.
Yeah.
And he routes these people and brings them to work, and
Sure.
be a hand in a glove fit for that kind of thing.
Mhm.
And then that's exactly one of kind of our use cases for this. And like, as we kind of develop this process to bring the van program, we see there's a huge potential to have. I don't know if you remember the number we thrown out for the number of potential vans.
Yeah, I think when we looked at like what would be great over the course of 3 years, if we could get to almost 30 vans in operation, I think that would be a really great kind of market potential for us. My calculation, so it could be very wrong because we're already at 8.
Yeah.
And we just started, right? So in 3 years from now, with appropriate growth, it'll be interesting to see.
I know one business in Elkhart that bought a bus thinking it would help them attract employees. But he subsequently found out it was a great way of retaining employees by offering that service. So it's.
Yep.
But
Yeah, the reason Vanpool works so well, just kind of to get kind of on a higher level, is that basically the most expensive part of running a city bus is really paying the driver. You know, paying that dedicated professional that's there to drive. And the reason Vanpool is such a cost-effective solution for these solutions is the fact that it's literally just an employer who's driving the van that's already, who's already gonna make the drive anyway, basically. And now they're basically, and generally the enterprise is handling all the specific costs. So like we're not really involved in those discussions directly, but I do know that, for example, like if I'm the one driving, I'll get additional benefits for putting in that kind of extra labor.
And there are guaranteed ride home programs as well, where say you're sick or you find out your kid's sick, right? Like, how do you get home if you're in the van pool program? There are guaranteed ride home program where you basically can Uber, Lyft, call a taxi, and we'll cover, I think it's the first 2 of those in a year.
You get up to 4 a year.
Okay.
MACOG covers the cost of the first 2.
That's right.
Enterprise will cover the cost of the second. That's just
Yep.
kind of the contract.
Right. So like those kind of things to be able to make sure that like it is flexible for when life happens. Right. So there are those kind of options within the program, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see, and we can't wait to tell you more about it as the weeks and months unfold. But please help us promote that amongst employers and amongst your staff so that they're aware and can start to make those connections.
The one question I had is MACOG offering assistance in route optimization for those participating in the van pool, or everybody meeting in one place to hop onto the van?
Yeah, so we have kind of been looking for a turnkey solution, and so I know Enterprise does a lot of that. So really they're handling a lot of the user information and that, so we're not collecting the personal identifiable info.
I assume that
Yep.
you use Enterprise to maintain the value of the vehicle,
Yeah.
put less miles on it.
Exactly. We are, in later months, you'll hear more about some transportation management tools that we're gonna be working on, where we'll be able to have a website where people can put in their name, their address, and like where they're going to, and they'll hopefully be able to see the various commute and transportation services that are available to them, whether that's van pool, whether they want to be able to match with someone to do carpool, whether there are e-scooters nearby, or whether because of age and trip type, they're able to use Council on Aging or Kosciuszko area bus service or something along those lines, which will have some of that kind of route and optimization of, hey, I live in this location and I'm going here. Oh, you might not know this, but there's already a van pool program that has 2 seats available that you could jump into potentially. Talk to me with Enterprise. So,
And
yep.
one reason that one reason that we did van pool first was that it also helped us to make sure that as we choose this vendor, that they're able to integrate with Connect by Enterprise, and so that I can see, on it, maybe not necessarily address by address basis, but there's a rough van pool that could help me with my commute trip.
This is great. I work for Goodwill, and one of our biggest challenges is getting people from South Bend to jobs in those areas. So very much would love to have a conversation about how we.
Yeah. And if it's helpful, I can do an introduction to Craig, who's kind of our point of contact at Commute with Enterprise, and I can make sure that you're connected. Great. It's been a busy RFQ, RFP procurement season. Last but not least on the list has been our general legal counsel. We were reaching the end of our 5-year term with our current legal counsel with Thorne and Grodnick. And we have done that process, and we received 2 proposals. We scored those and opted to retain our current legal counsel. They were providing us with the best qualifications for the services that we were needing at also a pretty affordable price. And so you'll continue to get to see Mr. Triple. So thank you for your service. That is a 3-year contract. And at the end of those 3 years, there are 2 1-year renewals. So up to 5. So wanting to make you aware that we will be continuing to work with Thorne and Grodnick as our legal counsel for at least the next 3 years. And if things go well, 2 1-year renewals thereafter.
It's on the agenda, privilege of the floor. Anybody have anything to? How about public comment?
There's nothing online.
Okay. With that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Thank you.